Custom stream. Okay. I also want to record it in case something goes wrong. I've learned that lesson because that's happened a couple of times. Okay, it looks like in theory we are live in YouTube space. So we should get this started.
Let's go.
Okay, very cool. So today we're doing something a little different, and this makes sense to me, is to have some of our friends join us. So it's not just the same thing every week. So we are very fortunate to have people with a very awesome tool that we're going to be showing you in the future at some other events, but I thought here's a good preview. So I invited them to join us, show you a little demo, show you a little about what we're doing. And then after that, I got some other stuff we're playing with, but I think this is the most interesting thing of the day. So hopefully this will go well and we'll be able to share their demo. You guys ready?
Yeah, I'm excited to have our to meet our friends here, introduce our friends to the world.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
we're ready. Thank you.
You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, guys. This is Arvind here. I'm a co-founder at Crux AI, previously at Meta and CultFit. And joining me is also Ashwin. Ashwin is my co-founder. He is the Viz in our company. He's the CTO. Yeah, we both work together at Meta. We've been working in the Gen AI developer tooling space. And so we are super excited to show you guys RAG Builder. So let me quickly share my screen and we'll go from there. Cool. So I had some slides prepared for advanced drag optimization. So we're not going to do that in its entirety today. Yeah, I'm just going to very quickly go through like the problem that we're trying to solve. So I think a lot of you would be familiar with RAG, right? Like RAG is very popular these days. But a lot of you might have noticed that it's not easy to build a production grade RAG. A lot of you might have built, toy prototypes, POCs, maybe are tinkering around with RAG. Super easy, super fun. But creating a production grade RAG, that's a whole different ballgame. That's not so much fun, right? Why is that? That's because a RAG has a lot of moving parts, right? And there are just so many techniques and so many strategies out there. So it just becomes really hard to figure out what are the optimal configuration, what is the optimal RAG setup for your data and your use case, right? So if we look at RAG, there's data ingestion, there's retrieval, there's re-ranking, there's generation, so on and so forth, right? And each part comes with numerous options, right? Like if you take data ingestion, you need to figure out what is the right chunk size for your data that's going to work the best, right? You need to figure out what's the right embedding model to use to go along with your data, and so on and so forth, right? So just to give you a very toy example, if as a developer you had to pick from 5 different chunking methods, 5 different chunk sizes, and so on and so forth, just a super toy example, do you know how many RAG configurations that would be? That would be 5 raised to 7, 78,000 different RAG configurations, right? And so if you take even just 5 minutes to try each one out,
Is it
in use case.
oh, we lost you for a few minutes, so you just told us about the number of configurations. You gotta kind of
Oh,
rewind
okay.
a little.
Yeah. Sorry, I think probably the internet is a little flaky. But yeah, I was just saying that the number of RAG configurations can really grow exponentially with each parameter or each moving part in the RAG. And so clearly it's not possible to practically test every single RAG configuration. So how do you figure out what's the optimal RAG configuration for your data and your use case, right? That's where RAG Builder comes in. So RAG Builder does hyperparameter tuning on the different parameters of a RAG, like chunk size, embedding model, retrievers, re-rankers, and so on and so forth. And it helps you figure out what is that optimal RAG configuration for your data and your use case, right? It also comes with a bunch of predefined state-of-the-art RAG templates. So you as a developer don't have to, reinvent the wheel. A lot of innovation is happening in this space. And so we have kind of pre-built a bunch of them into our tool, right? So without further ado, let's kind of jump into the demo. So I'm going to real quick move windows. So by the way, installation is super easy. If you go to ragbuilder.io, you can just copy this command and paste it in your terminal, and you should be good to go. It does brew install and bunch of other things, but largely it's pip install, right? So I've already installed rag builder. So I'm just going to come to my terminal. I'm going to type in rag builder. And what it's going to do is it's going to spin up a UVCon app locally based on Fast API, right? So everything runs locally in your system, in your environment, unless you're using a third-party AI service like OpenAI or something around those lines. Data is never leaving your system, your environment, right? So that's kind of good about it. Yeah, let's take maybe a couple of seconds for it to spin up. There you go. Awesome. So once it spins up, you get this dashboard. Like I said, it's running locally. Let's say I would create a RAG. I just click on new project. I go give a description. So let's say we're creating a blog chatbot. Let's use some source data. Let's use Lillian Bank's blog post about agents, popular blog post. By the way, this particular source data field, this can accept a local directory. It can accept a file. It can accept a URL. So it's kind of versatile in that regard, right? Now, like I said, we come with a bunch of predefined RAG templates. So that's the first option that you see here. So we're going to leave that on. The second one is where we create RAG configurations ground up on the fly, right? And where we do hyperparameter tuning. So let's go ahead and click next. So these are the RAG templates. We just launched this a couple of days back. So it's not like super exhaustive, but we just have a bunch of them which are interesting, like query expansion with reciprocal RAG fusion, step back prompting, query rewrite, hide, hybrid RAG, etc. We're going to click next. In this screen, you get to choose, or you get to tailor your RAG configurations at a more granular level, right? So you get to choose what vector DB you want to use. So let's go ahead and use, Milvus as a vector DB. We're going to, keep everything selected by default. Let's maybe go ahead and select some of the other compression techniques as well. Yeah, you can also use OLAMA if you want to run things locally. You just specify, you just do OLAMA pull and just specify that model name. I just realized I might not have the Milvus credentials in my EMB. So if it's okay, I'm going to just run it for ChromaDB. Let's go ahead and click next. And yeah, in this screen, you get to choose what kind of evaluation framework you want to use for the RAG. So by default, we use Ragas. We are building support for deep eval, Aries, TrueLens, etc. But you'll have more granular control over the metrics as well. But more importantly, you got to specify what data set are we going to use to evaluate the RAG, right? Because we got to do hyperparameter tuning, and that requires a golden data set which we can use to benchmark the RAG configurations, right? So we can either generate that golden data set for you automatically based on your source data set, or we can provide it as a CSV file. So in my case, I already have a CSV file where I've generated that question and ground truth pair. So by the way, that CSV file is just 2 columns. It's just a question and a ground truth. So we're going to go ahead and click next. Review all the confirmation, review all the selections, and hit confirm, and bam. What it's doing is it's going to figure out what is that optimal RAG configuration, right? So as you can see, there are 312,000 different RAG configurations based on the selections that we, entered. It's going to run 50 times and figure out what is that optimal RAG configuration, right? So we're not going to wait for this. I'm going to show you real quick what does the dashboard look like once it has completed. So once it has completed running, this is the kind of screen that you get where you can see all these different rack configurations and the associated metrics and the corresponding metrics, right? Like what does the accuracy look like in terms of answer correctness? What are the precision and recall for your context retrieval? What's the cost per query based on the token usage? What's the latency like, and so on and so forth, right? So this particular configuration, this used chunk size 1,000 with an overlap of 200. It used a bunch of different retrievers here, like vector similarity search, vector MMR, BM25, and so on and so forth. And so it looks like it performed the best, but it didn't do as great in terms of latency. But if we scroll just a little bit here, we see there's another one here which had great latency, almost half the amount of latency, and not too bad in terms of accuracy as well, right? And so I might actually prefer shipping this to production. And so I can just click on View Code Snippet, and with a click of a button, I have the code for a much more optimized RAG setup for my data and my use case, right? So yeah, that's RAG Builder for you. We are developing a lot of additional features as part of our roadmap, but please do check us out. Our GitHub repo is cruxai/RAG Builder, github.com/cruxai/RAG Builder. Please do check us out and would love to get some feedback. But thanks a lot, Tim, for this opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity to showcase this.
That's really cool. I mean, in fact, last night, my VP of engineering, James, and I were at a meetup in San Francisco, and the talk that he gave was actually articulating some of the new, kind of the newer strategies for RAG. You articulated some in your demo, and as he was talking, it just became really apparent to me that I think what a lot of developers need to keep in mind is as you're building your prototype for RAG, you need to focus on the search quality, which is what you are ultimately doing with all those different approaches, right? You can't just do vanilla RAG. You can't do vanilla search. And I think a lot of people who haven't really done search understand that it's not as straightforward. And there's a lot of interesting things that you have to do that you articulated.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Like in essence, RAG is a search problem, right? And it's an age-old problem. But with LLMs now we have this amazing opportunity to marry these two technologies together. But at the same time, like you just said, there's just so many different moving parts. There's so many different techniques to search. It's so nuanced, right? Depending on the use case, depending on the data that you're working with. And so it becomes very challenging to optimize that search problem, right? And so that was the kind of inspiration that we had in order to build RAG Builder.
Yeah, I love it. I love that, you are attacking the problems from all the way from the embedding, right? Because I mean, I've had some developers come up to me and say, well, why doesn't the database just pick the embedding? I'm like, well, I wish it could, but it's not a magician, right? It doesn't know what the heck is in your data set. And so, yeah, and then every step of the way, as you articulated, chunking strategies, you could lose context, right? And so then it would no matter what you did, the answers are going to be bizarre. You could, you also need a test. I love that you have that evaluation built in. I also love that even in that evaluation, you can change, which LLM you want to use, because maybe that's also going to be, a good thing to do, right? To kind of bring in some kind of diversity. So maybe you can just kind of describe how did you actually attack this problem, as you were, what kind of got you inspired in the beginning? And then how did you, start to build out what I think is
Yeah.
a pretty impressive product, but it's definitely clear that you didn't do it overnight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the whole genesis of this idea actually began when Ashwin and I we were working on our earlier startup idea. We were developing like a AI nutritionist app, and so we had a front row seat to the kind of problems that developers face when building a reliable production grade Gen AI solution, right? And so we saw firsthand how hard it is to manage hallucinations when it comes to LLMs, and how do you make it reliable? How do you create something which is, production grade that you can put in front of your customers, right? With confidence, right? And so that was sort of the seed thought. And so we went and spoke to, 30 odd developers about, their challenges in building Gen AI apps. We came up with this hypothesis that hey, a RAG has a lot of moving parts, right? And as a developer, it's very overwhelming to figure out what is that optimal, best performing setup for your use case and for your data, right? Because there's so many frameworks out there, first of all, right? Like there's LangChain, there's Llama Index, there's Haystack, and then once you decide that, within the RAG, there's just so many different moving parts, like starting from data ingestion to, retrieval to generation, re-ranking, so on and so forth, right? So yeah, the journey that we had was obviously we started with like a much more hacky version of this, where all we had was like a bunch of predefined templates, and we were doing like an exhaustive search from all these different parameters of the RAG. Clearly, that was not scalable, but we started with that. But we soon figured out like we need to do something more clever. We need to figure out what is that optimal configuration given a use case and the data. We need to have a cleverer technology, like a optimization piece which figures out what is that optimal setup, right? And that's where we figured, why don't we apply hyperparameter tuning? Hyperparameter tuning is a well-known ML technique, right? Where you figure out what are the optimal values, possible values. And so we figured, why don't we apply hyperparameter tuning to RAG? And that's where we started building. And within 4 weeks or so, we got our MVP out. So yeah, this is like very relatively fresh out of the oven. So would love to get feedback on how it is.
But I mean, you're even though you got it out in such a short period of time, I think because of your background and your knowledge, that's why you're able to do it, right? Because I think still like developers, if they're like kind of new to like building RAG, for them to get to the knowledge that you two are at, it's not 4 weeks, right? It takes a very long time. And so we should make sure that the audience understands that you're actually getting here is like years worth of experience, right?
Right.
Within this application, and being able to do this kind of fine tuning. So folks, there's no way, if you're new, there's no way you can do this in 4 weeks. You have to like bang your head on the wall a lot to, get to this point so that, you can build something so elegant. The other thing that I think is pretty cool about what you built is I love that the output is code, because then I think, a developer can actually learn and see what's actually happening here and then do even further fine tuning. So how did you come to the idea that that's what you wanted that output to be?
Yeah, great question. So if you look at the market, there are actually several RAG builder tools out there, right? Like there's several of them. They're all using a black box approach, right? Meaning, the way it works is, you go in with your data, and you're promised like an API or a RAG solution, and you just have to trust that it works. It is the best performing RAG, right? Developers, although are are very skeptical about black box solutions, right? Developers want transparency. They want to see what's happening under the hood. They want to see the metrics. They want to see why is this the best performing one, right? Like show me, right? Rather than tell me, right? So, so that was the sort of reason why we went with this approach for our product development, like where we wanted to, be like super transparent, like, hey, here's the dashboard. You get to see how did all these different rack configurations perform, and then you decide what matters to you. If latency matters more to you, you decide what's the right rack configuration for you. If accuracy is what you care about, then you pick the one which is the most accurate, right? So the control is still in you as a developer, right? Within you as a developer. And so um, that was the reason why we kind of chose that approach of showing the dashboard. And obviously the value is in being able to shortcut that several months of iteration, manual trial and error, which is what developers do today, right? And so we figured, why don't we give a code snippet handily available, so that as a developer, you come to this dashboard, you figure out like, this is the best performing setup that I want to push to production. And, with a click of a button, you get that code snippet out, right? So that's how we kind of built that. And that's not where we are stopping, right? We want to make it easy for you to deploy your RAG as well. So, we want to make it one-click deploy, where rather than just getting the code snippet, you can click on a button and your RAG is shipped to production, right? Plus, in the future, the space is evolving so fast that maybe next week there's going to be a new way of retrieval, or maybe there's a new way of chunking, who knows, right? And so you as a developer shouldn't have to worry about keeping your RAG optimized once it's in production, right? And so what we want to do is use click to deploy deploy to production. But once you do that, your RAG stays optimized, right? So in the future, if there's a newer or better way of doing, say, retrieval or chunking or something else, you don't have to worry about learning that, trying that out, testing it out again all over, and so on and so forth, right? So we kind of want to abstract all of that away from you as a developer, and kind of give you, again, while leaving that control with you, but add value through auto optimization in the production system as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I love that you took that approach, because I do see everyone else is doing that kind of pointy clicky interface. It's magic. But then you just get into trouble, because you're not going to get the results that you want, right? In your prototype, of course, it's going to work. But, in prod, it never works, right? So maybe we can just talk a little bit about you hinted about it, but you said that you might have different latency requirements, you might have different recall requirements. Like, why? Maybe you can apply it to some like use cases, like where that really matters, so it can kind of contextualize why they have to think about these requirements.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think look, people are using RAG for a very diverse set of use cases, right? And so, for example, we are working with a bunch of legal tech companies. Legal tech is exploding, right? Like, people are building legal chatbots for lawyers, for companies, and so on and so forth, right? And there's just incredible amount of data that they need to process and make it work within the RAG system, and everyone has a different problem that they have, right? So, like, some of the folks that we're talking to are struggling with the data pre-processing, right? Some others, on the other hand, are struggling with the latency of their system, right? And they want to ship it to production. They want to onboard users and start getting feedback, but latency is so damn poor that they're kind of stuck, right? Some others, actually most others, are struggling with the accuracy itself, right? Like the reliability of the RAG, right? Like that kind of underpins the whole, reason why we built this tool, right? And so, it kind of ranges from use case to use case. But like I said, we figured that people obviously care the most about accuracy and reliability, but they also care about other auxiliary metrics like the cost, right, and the latency and so on and so forth, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that um, you want to understand how how each component within the RAG is performing, right? Which is why precision and recall measurement become important, right? So it's not sufficient to measure just the end-to-end accuracy of a RAG system, but it's important to measure, how your retriever is performing, right? Is it, getting the right chunks? Is it re-ranker that's failing? Is it the query itself, right, which is poor to begin with, and so on and so forth, right? And so, again, that's the reason why we, have this approach of showing as many metrics as we can, and then you as a developer, get to decide like what's more important to you, and then figure out that trade-offs that you're going to make, right? Like it's always a trade-off, right? Like it's either latency or accuracy, or
Or
something
cost, right?
or
Yeah.
cost. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
And those
yeah.
become like really, really pertinent once you go into production, because now you have real life users that are saying this is too slow, or, this answer is bizarre, or, this isn't what I was expecting, or your boss is like, this is too expensive. You got to like figure out how to make this so that, we can, make money with this application instead of keep spending money.
Totally.
And I think, too often in prototyping, these things don't seem to like, pop up, right? Because it's just on my machine.
Right,
But
right.
it's like within the first week of production, all these things start to show up really quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are some things that you have on the roadmap?
Yeah, we have an exciting roadmap. I think I can talk about maybe two things that we are really excited about. The first one is probably interesting for the audience as well. The second one is kind of more on the back end. So let me probably spend a little bit of time on that, on the first one, right? So the first item on our roadmap, the big item on our roadmap is to integrate graph RAG, right? Meaning bring your data and kind of be able to build a graph RAG, or maybe the new hybrid RAG. Previously, hybrid RAG used to mean, vector similarity plus BM25 keyword search, but now it looks like hybrid is being used to say graph RAG plus vector similarity search, right? So yeah, we are excited about that. Like a lot of people have been requesting for that. Like they want to bring in their data, get a graph created automatically out of it, and make it work with vector similarity search. With I don't know, maybe Milvus in the backend. So that's not going to be an easy thing to do. It's probably going to take us a few weeks to ship that, but that's super interesting. Hopefully, once we do it, it's going to be super powerful where, someone can just come with their data and get like a really full-fledged performant RAG, which has graph RAG and, vector similarity plus BM25 and all of those things built in. So that's super interesting. The other thing that we are working on is overall on the optimization side, what we want to be able to do is uh, allow developers to bring in their individual components that they may have pre-built. So, for example, maybe you have a custom retriever built, or maybe you have a custom chunker built for your data, and so on and so forth. And so we want to make it flexible enough for developers to bring in their components, and do hyperparameter tuning using those components, right? And more importantly, we want to show developers the kind of accuracy improvement that they get. So, for example, I may come with my RAG. So think of it like BYOR, bring your own RAG. And so you come in with your RAG, excuse me, and we kind of show you, hey, you could get a 20% accuracy lift, and here's how it's possible, right? You just swap your chunker with this particular chunking. You probably add this re-ranker to your existing RAG, and bam, you'll get a 20% accuracy lift, right? So those are a couple of like ambitious, big bets that we are working on.
I love it. That was exactly what I was gonna, that's what I want. Is that as you were going through the demo, I'm like, oh, what if I made some changes? Or what if I came up with some other, strategies? Maybe it's combinations of things. And then I want to bring my code back in and be like, okay, let's see, how does it fare? Right.
Right.
Because ultimately, I think you want to be able to use this tool all the time, not just one time, spit out the code and then goodbye, but constantly using it as a way to test. I think that's definitely the right thing to do. Just for the audience, actually, last night we were talking about GraphRag. I think those relationships are actually pretty useful, but maybe you can describe to the audience, what is that really about so that they can understand it, just in case they haven't, even touched on it yet.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, we are also kind of just starting to get our hands dirty with that. I don't know if I'd be able to like sh share a lot of detail which the audience might not already be aware of. But I don't know, Ashwin, if you you have anything to share on this, like on the graph rag, anything that you would like to share? If not, it's totally okay as well. We can talk about something else.
Yeah, I think what we are trying to refer right now is the Microsoft paper on the graph rag. I mean, that's like very exciting. So that's something we are referring to and trying to see like what we can do, learning that, as well as I think Neo4j also launched some graph builder kind of tool. So we are trying to learn from that and trying to see like how we can build some of those enhancements into our tool for building graph rag. So it's basically a mix of building a graph and searching the entities based on keywords. At the same time, leveraging a vector similarity search and BM25 and building that hybrid rag, which is a new hybrid rag of graph rag plus vector similarity. And that gives, and also like there's also this concept around enhancing the graph using the vector search that we get. So that's also another good concept as such. So we're trying to build all these things into a graph rag feature as such in the rag builder.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's really cool. So we actually have a couple of blogs that we can share with everybody on this that's listening today. But essentially what we've all been using semantic search to try to find things that are similar, right? Because that's kind of the obvious thing when we're doing this kind of a search. But if you've ever used Neo4j and you've seen these like entity relationships, understanding these relationships between like, different things is also a useful thing when you're doing search. So just marrying the two there is just going to make, a much more accurate response. And so I think it's definitely the right thing for you guys to focus on. And I'm really excited to see, that capability in your product.
for sure. Thank you.
Tim, I'm sorry. I got just so excited.
No, that's awesome.
When I was watching
This is what we
the
want.
demo, I was like,
Live discussion.
wow, this is great, because I don't know how many times we can talk about all those strategies. And I know we're overwhelming a lot of people that are just kind of new. But I think, I think a lot of people learn by, looking, like listening and looking at the code and kind of tweaking it. So, I think the approach that you are presenting to developers is perfect, because it's like they can actually look at the code and then, really grok it and then go back in and tune some more. So I think it's the right way to do this. And I'm really, really thrilled that we're talking today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the cycle, right? Yeah. Run, test all the parameters, run, refactor. I mean, this is very, especially once you can, have the code maintained and updated in your system, becomes a virtuous cycle for developers. So I could try it, okay, get into production, and then something like, oh, we need to tweak this, or there's a new technique come out, which is pretty frequent. So to be able to go, let's try this, and maybe blue-green test things, go, okay, I'm gonna run a graph rag version in our version we've been running and see what the difference is, capture metrics, and then go, okay, let's switch to one, really have something that builds into enterprise developer life cycle. Because right now I think a lot of this is happening outside of the standard software engineering process, because some of it is just too much experimentation, too much unknown, and no good way to test all these different parameters. So I think this is very helpful and a sign we're moving slowly forward into making this something that'll be, really enterprise scale for some of those companies that are like, oh, we don't start doing this stuff until it has this tool, and this metric tool, and this whole thing. So we know if I put this in production at a massive scale and we're a regulated company or a company that's, really does not release things unless they know it passed all these tests and it's really solid, to have something that they could see and manage is a big deal. So I think this is just going to continue. People have other tools. We have some other friends have got tools for the pre-processing. I mean, we're starting to see a whole pipeline build out with proper engineering practices, proper testing, all these things in there, because there's so much, just to get to the base point of where it's what we expect for enterprise software. Because when you're in production, there's a lot that could go wrong, and they're no longer like, oh, this is a little chat bot in the corner. This could be a major part of your business or your whole business. We've got some events coming up with some AI startups, and that's their whole business. So this is important stuff. It's not we're beyond the point of, oh, look how cool this is. Now we're like, this is my new app that I require to use every day. And if this doesn't do things correctly, if this doesn't have the latest information, we're in trouble. The users are in trouble. The company relying on it's in trouble. We got to have this. And I think this is a nice tool to see in the toolbox. What events do you guys have coming up? Webinars, meetups? I know we're planning stuff together, but what else you got?
Yeah, we got actually, I'm talking tomorrow at an event here in Bangalore, where we're going to talk about advanced drag optimization. And so the slides that I was presenting was actually from that. But yeah, maybe we can do something like that together as well, where we talk about some of these advanced drag optimization techniques. And there's just so many of them, and it's confusing when to use what, and do I really need to do that or not? Yeah, so we got that, and then we did a couple of events last week, and then we have I think 2 more meetups coming up in October.
Nice. So as we kind of close this out, I have 2 meaty questions to ask you guys. The first one is, what advice would you give to an application developer, someone who doesn't have the background that you have, right, in ML and Gen AI applications, but they're like really excited to build out maybe a RAG application? What advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think I'm kind of a believer of getting your hands as dirty as quickly as possible. And so I would just suggest to an application developer to not be afraid of being overwhelmed, because it's like inevitable that you will get overwhelmed in this field. Because there's just so much going on. So the best way to navigate it is to just jump in the deep end of the pool, right? Like just get your hands dirty. And there's just no dearth of any tutorials or videos. There's just so many of them, right? And so for an application developer who's just getting started, who's starting to feel left behind, this is still like the very early phase of this AI revolution that we are starting to see. So I would advise, better late than never, just jump in, get your hands dirty, start with like the simplest, maybe start with, I don't know, like maybe LangChain naive RAG, right? Like just put together a sample data set, embed it, hook it up to, a vector DB, and, start exploring, right? Like how it performs, right? That's the first step. right? The second step is to then start getting into, slightly more advanced techniques, like be it, advanced chunking, or be it more like advanced pre-retrieval or post-retrieval, techniques like re-ranking and, query expansion, query rewriting, and so on and so forth. And then slowly work your way through, right? Like eventually, I guess, as a developer, you would have a real use case that you want to, actually ship to production. And so probably, a couple of months, or maybe just a few weeks of getting your hands dirty gets you set up to start working on that actual production use case. And then by then you are aware of the nuances, you are aware of how to test your RAG, how to figure out where is the bottleneck and how to optimize it. And of course, don't forget to use RAG Builder.
That goes without saying. Ashwin, how about you? Any advice?
Yeah, one thing that we face quite a lot is about like there's so many libraries and so many tools out there, and I think yeah, I mean we should try out all these different tools. I mean LangChain, Llama Index, DSPy, so many of I mean both all of them work in different ways, and all of them have their own pros and cons. So yeah, it's good to try these multiple various tools, which will give them a good perspective about what works for their each use case kind of thing. So every use case has their own thing. Some needs like some advanced prompt engineering, which DSPy could do. Some needs more like a chaining kind of concept. Some are like more like programming, like Llama Index would work for them. That's one thing. So I think yeah, trying these different tools and seeing which works for them is very crucial, because every tool has its own pro and con. So I think that's also something that developers should keep in mind when they're trying out all these things.
Yeah, I think you two are absolutely right. Developers need to try it for themselves and make sure it works for them. Like, don't just, be forced to do it a certain way. One, it's no fun, and two, it's just not going to work. And I think, what your product really showcases is that, yeah, lots of fine tuning, whether it's fine tuning because you're picking a certain tool or certain, ML model or whatever it is, right? It's really got to fit your requirements, your data set, your needs. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I love the advice of or like the prediction that you will get overwhelmed. I think that's really good, because people will, but you gave them the confidence that they're going to get out and something good's going to come out of this. So I think that's really cool. My final question is, what do you think is going to happen in 5 years? What do you think we're going to end up building from all of this? Because right now it's like really fast and really chaotic, but I have a feeling the two of you have like some inkling of what's going to happen. So maybe you can kind of share with us what your predictions are.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question. I don't know if I'm going to do justice to that, but I would just say this, that yeah, you are absolutely right. Like I think 5 years from now is going to look very, very different. And I think we are starting to see that, right? Like I don't think I'm writing anything just by myself these days. Like I'm always using AI to, refine it, rewrite it, and make it improved, make it better, right? And so that's going to happen in every aspect of our life, is what I believe, right? Like starting with, the basic things like writing your emails to all the way to how you think about your health, right? Like what kind of workouts should you do today, and some more advanced things like that. So that's, I think, one thing that's going to happen. Like obviously 5 years from now, AI is going to be super, super ingrained in all of our lives. That's one. Second is, I think on the enterprise side, I think 5 years from now, we're going to see a lot more like widespread adoption, right? Like, in I think today's landscape, enterprises are still kind of figuring out how to, navigate this fast moving space. Everyone is feeling like afraid that they're not AI ready. What's their AI strategy? They don't have a strategy in place. And so everyone is in kind of that anxious phase. But I think people are still trying to figure out like POCs and prototypes and just trying to see where is the value? How can I make business value out of this technology? And so 5 years from now, I think we would have been well past that phase, and people would have figured out, like businesses would have figured out how to unlock value. And so there's just going to be a ton of interesting opportunities and challenges out there during this course of this 5 years. And that's what is really exciting for me personally.
Ashwin?
Yeah, same, pretty much the same. Things are going to be very different in the next 5 years. What we see right now is like a lot of models coming like probably every week, and a lot of new RAG techniques coming like probably every week as well, and people trying out stuff. So in 4 to 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised, like maybe RAG, it's like commoditized kind of thing, maybe like search. So I believe that it'd be much more mature in terms of, I think like developers wouldn't need a lot of experimentation to figure out like what is most optimal. There would be like products which would help them like just plug and get the optimal RAG by themselves. At the same time, be transparent and flexible, so that they get visibility into like why is it working this way, and get some explainability into why is it not working in a particular way. So I think the tools would have matured quite a lot in another 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, right now I think there's some people or I guess research firms that are saying, oh, AI is just hype, and you can't get any ROI and blah blah blah, right? And we go through these cycles all the time, right? It's like, oh, it's a hype, and then boom, it's not. I think when I saw your demo, what got me really thinking is that when you're not in it, it looks like it's a hype, but what's actually happening because of RAG Builder and tools like that is people or developers are actively working on something that is transformational. And when the hype cycle is over, it just like looks like it just appears. But I think it's a lot of hard work from a lot of people sharing a lot of code. And I think in 5 years, RAG is not going to look like RAG at all. I think just seeing what you guys have already built let's get real. RAG became like well known with the developer community a year ago, right? I know there were some papers before, but that's when everyone started going, oh, what the heck is this? I think in 5 years, it's just not even going to look at anything like this at all. I love your prediction about how, it's just going to be, it's just going to be kind of known how to be able to get the best search results because of all this experimentation that everyone's doing right now. It's all going to eventually come together. And I'm hoping that we'll see something that is just a totally different approach to search. I'm really looking forward to that because I think we've all been training ourselves to, do so much extra work. And I think it's time to like not have to do any of that extra work as users, right, of search tools. So I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and really glad to be part of this.
So if you guys are ever in Berlin, New York City, the San Francisco or South Bay, or a number of other locations, please come and do a talk at one of our unstructured data meetups. Of course, we'll do stuff with you regardless. We can do it, virtually. We'll have plenty of opportunities to do that. But it's always fun to do it in person as well. So we invite you guys to, come hang out with us.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do that. Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Very cool.